Survival is a divisive gaming genre. While there are certainly some lukewarm fans, most people either love or hate this gaming experience. The mixed reactions come from the features that define these titles. Huge open worlds, a little direction, lack of a proper goal, logical crafting, hard to find resources, and most importantly, the risk that you could lose it all isn't appealing to everyone. Others love the rush it provides, though. Fortunately for fans of this genre, there's increasing innovation in the style, so now there are hybrid versions that try to take what's best about survival games and graft it onto other game styles. With the variety in this genre, players with Xbox Game Pass have access to some great survival games, including a few of the best. Terraria grew directly out of the excitement for Minecraft, making some similar concessions in terms of a block universe. However, Terraria limits the world significantly by making it a two-dimensional, pixelated setup. It makes up for this limitation by giving you an even more comprehensive array of monsters to fight. There are several epic bosses and powerful waves of outrageous enemies you can summon by crafting magic items. There are also plenty of well-developed NPCs that you can trade with. They also sometimes give you scraps of information and quests, another very fun one for family play. Ark plops you down nearly naked in a world full of dinosaurs. It's tough to hold your own. Dilophosaurs may be small, but they are vicious, and you'll die many times before you learn how to craft the weapons and tools necessary to fend them off. As you gain skills, though, the challenge makes this game very satisfying, especially when you start learning to construct shelters, transportation, and train dinosaurs. You can really rule the land from the back of a baryonyx. In Revenge of a Savage Planet, you explore a few colorful and dangerous worlds. They're filled with strange plants and even stranger creatures. The latter you can fight using an array of weapons. However, the game is more about exploring, scanning things, and upgrading your stuff. The survival elements are light, as you aren't managing your hunger or anything like that. But you start with nothing and have to build yourself up if you have any chance of returning to Earth after being abandoned. That sounds like a very serious premise, but the game is actually light-hearted and fun. Atomfall places you in 1960s England. That may not seem the most hazardous place to survive in, but the version of England from the game has been the victim of a nuclear disaster, which has made it a radioactive quarantine area. The place is surprisingly beautiful, filled with greenery and other bright colors. You need to roam the place seeking resources. Along the way, you will encounter a bunch of enemies which you can fight head-on or use stealth to bypass. Fallout 76 is a more multiplayer-focused Fallout title than others in the series. Like the standard Fallout game, it's set in an open-world wasteland, and like any wasteland, the place is filled with dangers. You've got to watch out for mutated creatures and other players. Also, you can get diseases and be mutated if you're not careful. So, you have to look after yourself in this game. Along with staying alive, this means you also need to manage your gear, so keeping your inventory in shape and crafting useful things is key to your survival too. Trailmakers is a sandbox game with vehicle construction mechanics. The game allows you to build all sorts of interesting modes of transportation. In the Stranded in Space campaign mode, your character crash lands on a planet, and you must build a spaceship to fly home. This means you have to roam around a brightly colored open world to acquire the resources needed for such a feat. I don't take the journey lightly, as while the art style of the game is wholesome, you can still die. In Hunt Showdown, you are a bounty hunter who is tasked with eliminating your target. However, this is a multiplayer game, so there are also other hunters going after the bounty at the same time. You must contend with both them and the target. It is more of a first-person shooter than a traditional survival game. That said, survival is an important part of the experience since you don't respawn in the standard game mode. It is possible for a teammate to revive you, but it's not a simple process, so staying alive is vital to success. Dead Space 3 is a survival horror game that pits you against all sorts of creatures known as necromorphs. When you beat Dead Space 3, you unlock a new Game Plus mode called Pure Survivor. In this mode, you can no longer pick up ammo, health, or useful stasis packs. All you can grab are resources that you can use to build supplies at a bench. Naturally, this makes things more difficult and tiresome as you won't always be near a bench. On the bright side, it does make it feel more like a survival game, as you have to craft your own supplies. The Earth does a terrible job of surviving in Starbound, as it's attacked right at the start of the story. You're able to get out of there, though, and explore the galaxy in a ship. You don't spend all your time in the vessel, though, as you can visit various procedurally generated planets to do a bit of farming and building. You also need to keep yourself alive, meaning you need to make sure you're well fed. After all, Earth cannot be avenged if you starve to death. Among Us isn't often called a survival game, but the whole game is about survival. It's a multiplayer title in which a group of players perform small tasks around the map. At least one of them is a killer in disguise. As one of the regular crewmates, you need to evade the murderer and figure out who the imposter is before voting them out. If you're the killer, you need to murder crew members while keeping your identity a secret, or the living crew members will vote you out. So, whichever side you're on, you need to survive. Stalker 2 is an open-world survival game in which you must keep yourself safe in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, which was created after the 1986 disaster. It is a hazardous place, as it contains plenty of radiation, mutated creatures, and morally questionable individuals. So, part of the survival aspect of this FPS is not getting killed by those things. Yet, you also have to make sure you're well fed and manage your resources. This is all because your character entered the danger zone to discover more about the special crystal that appeared in his home. Aliens Dark Descent is a real-time tactics game set in the Alien universe. You are in control of a squad of Marines to whom you must give commands. So, you choose where they move and what actions they take. In fact, their survival is down to you, as there is a permadeath mechanic in play, meaning you have to be careful. Not only do you need to look after their physical health, though, they also get fatigued mentally, which can give them some debuffs, making it more likely that they will fall. What makes it even more likely they won't survive is they're mainly up against the always dangerous xenomorphs. Robin Hood Sherwood Builders isn't a pure survival game. Instead, it's a game that takes from multiple genres. There are elements of survival, action-adventure, RPG, and base building. Plus, it's an open-world title. The premise of the game is that the Sheriff of Nottingham is enjoying a tyrannical reign, and you have to help build a community for rebels, refugees, and anyone else who isn't a fan of the villain. So you must build up, protect, and provide for your little community in the hope it can one day challenge the tyrant. Many survival games are set in a post-apocalyptic world, as it tends to be a situation that is hard to survive. That is the case in the RPG title Wasteland 2. In it, you control and manage a group of rangers. As them, you make all sorts of decisions and participate in turn-based battles. You can consider this partially a survival game because there is permadeath in play. Therefore, if one of your rangers dies, they're gone forever. So try not to be too reckless in battle. Core Keeper is a sandbox survival game that puts plenty of focus on crafting. So it's similar to the likes of Terraria and Minecraft. However, unlike those games, you don't get to feel the fresh air or stare at the clouds. This is because the game is set in an endless, procedurally generated underground cavern. Much of the title is about mining resources and building things. Yet, it wouldn't be a survival game if there weren't some dangers. One of the biggest is your own stomach, as you need to keep your hunger bar full to stop yourself from starving. There are also enemies to deal with that may kill you before your hunger does. We Happy Few isn't what you'd call a pure survival game. After all, it's an action-adventure game at heart, but it contains some survival elements, such as the need to eat, drink, and sleep to keep yourself at your best. The reason you need to be at your best is because your characters are trying to escape a village called Wellington Wells. It looks like a great place to live if you're on the hallucinogenic drugs that residents are forced to take. Those not on the medication realize that it's a ruined dystopia. You have to get out of there, mainly by fighting or sneaking. In Palworld, the land you're trying to survive in is filled with cute Pokemon-like creatures. At first glance, you may not want to hurt them, but your best chance at survival requires you to at least capture them. After all, when you've got them under your command, you can put them to work, which helps you build up your resources. This may seem cruel, but you will be thankful for those supplies when rival trainers come to take you out. These people aren't the only threat, as you also have to fend off starvation. The creatures can also help with that by being food if you don't let pesky morality get in your way. Surviving in the regular Fallout New Vegas mode is tricky as you're living in a post-apocalyptic open world featuring all sorts of mutated creatures and morally corrupt humans that are willing to kill you. Yet, things ramp up even more in the hardcore mode, as it essentially turns New Vegas into a true survival game. No longer does sleeping in a bed miraculously heal broken limbs, nor are you able to live without eating and drinking. You need doctors and medical supplies to heal major injuries, and you must avoid dehydration and starvation. But you also need to get sleep to avoid sleep deprivation. This is all while still participating in gunfights and battles with deadly beasts. Generation Zero is an open-world first-person shooter with some survival elements. You don't need to watch your hunger or make sure you don't get thirsty. However, the whole concept of the game is about surviving in a world that has been taken over by robots. These machines are deadly, so you're encouraged to sneak around and take cheap shots to live through encounters with them. You also need to go around scavenging resources to help craft things and build bases. While Wasteland 3 is primarily an isometric turn-based RPG, it still has a survival element. This is because there is a permadeath feature, so any member of your crew can die during the game. Now, they won't die of hunger or thirst, but they can perish during the game's turn-based battles. The crew in question is led by 2 members of an Arizona Ranger team who have so far managed to stay alive in the post-apocalyptic frozen wasteland previously known as Colorado. As them, you complete quests, have conversations, and take part in battles. Vampire Survivors is an original and simple survival game. You're placed onto a plot of land, and a ridiculous number of enemies are thrown at enemies. It's so much so that it's also considered a bullet hell game. Your only goal is to survive the onslaught as long as you can. It doesn't have an array of deep mechanics like many other survival titles, but it doesn't need them. The various weapons and upgrades, along with the pure fun of surviving, are enough to keep the game interesting for many hours. Still Wakes the Deep is a first-person survival horror title with walking simulator elements. Throughout the game, you make your way through a very creepy oil rig. You aren't alone on this rig, as there are monsters creeping around. When they appear, all you can do is attempt to sneak, run, or hide because you have no way to fight them. So, the survival aspect in this one is all about surviving your encounters with these beasts. The original Dead Space is an iconic game, and this 2023 version is the definitive version of Isaac Clarke's first chapter, according to reviewer Jade King. It's more survival horror than simply survival, meaning what you have to live through is generally very scary. You're up against a seemingly endless number of alien monsters known as necromorphs as you attempt to navigate an abandoned ship in space. You can defend yourself against them as the game includes third-person shooting mechanics. The combat feels unique because you take down enemies by targeting their limbs. This helps it stand out from many others in the genre. For most people who play Fallout 4, it won't be a survival game, because if you play on the regular difficulties, it's an RPG. Yet there is a survival mode that adds aspects of the genre experience. In this mode, you have to stay well fed, hydrated, and well rested. You also have to deal with any illnesses or crippled limbs that you fall victim to. So it really is a pure survival game. However, it's still a Fallout title, meaning you still have to roam the post-apocalyptic wasteland that's filled with all sorts of mutated creatures and morally bankrupt people who aren't afraid to eliminate you. Whether or not Dead by Daylight is a survival game depends on what team you're on. After all, this is an asymmetric multiplayer game where one person plays as the killer while everyone else controls the survivors. As their name suggests, the role of the killer is to go around murdering everyone. If they all die, the killer wins. As the survivors, you aim to open up the exit or find another way to escape. It is essentially a highly violent game of cat and mouse. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be the size of an ant? Well, Grounded helps feed the curiosity. You play as a shrunken human who must survive in a backyard with plenty of bugs and other creatures. They all share their own purpose, with some being more useful than others. The spiders, for instance, are definitely not full as their goal is to kill you. And if you aren't fond of spiders, don't worry, as the game includes an arachnophobia SAF mode where you can change how the creatures look. While dealing with those beasts, you must eat and drink to stay alive. Frostpunk differs from many other games in the genre because you're not just looking after yourself or a small team. Instead, you must manage an entire city of people whose world has been destroyed due to global cooling. Along with being a survival game, it's a city simulator where you have to manage resources and your people. In the process, you must make some difficult judgment calls that aren't always going to make you well-liked among the population. But sometimes the unpopular choice will help keep people alive in the long run. It's fair to say that No Man's Sky had a difficult launch, but after several updates, the game has become a more polished and fascinating adventure. In it, you get the freedom to explore a bunch of procedurally generated planets, where you find materials that help you build up your gear. However, it's not as peaceful as it sounds, as these planets aren't devoid of life. There is usually something around that's trying to kill you, and it would be best if you used your wits and whatever equipment you have to survive the attacks while making the planet as habitable as possible. While Minecraft is certainly not the first entry into the genre, it led the charge for the current generation of survival games. Here you have all the elements you expect of this sort of title in their starkest, blockiest form. With no real goal and virtually unlimited space and resources, you can build whatever you want, assuming you can survive the hazards of wandering mobs, including the iconic creepers. Many Minecraft players get trauma flashbacks at the sound of sizzling bacon, thanks to those stealthy, exploding beasts. The game has limitations, but it's still amusing and perfect for family time with your little crafters. DayZ is a survival game that is online only, forcing you to explore the world with the hopes or fear of running into other players trying to survive. The rush of running into someone and not knowing their plans can be incredibly daunting to many, which is understandable, but we strongly urge fans of the genre to attempt this unique experience at least once. Additionally, DayZ has a relatively robust modding community and a large gathering in general, allowing you to easily meet like-minded players, setting you up for nearly endless hours of enjoyment. There's nothing like DayZ out there, and there's no questioning where its success came from, as trying to survive amongst zombies and real players is inherently terrifying and engaging. State of Decay 2 is a post-apocalyptic zombie horror survival game. What makes it different from many others is that you are not a lone survivor. Instead, you have to work together with other people who have managed to avoid being eaten by the undead. You must utilize their skills and build your own base to hold against the onslaught of the wandering zombie hordes. This game can be bloody, but it's also bloody fun. The team-based ethos gives it an uplifting core that contrasts sharply with the gruesome setting and grueling challenges. Astroneer is a very pure survival game. With neither time limits nor set goals, you wander the worlds of your solar system, collecting resources that enable you to research and build ever more complex technologies. While there are no animals in this game, only plants, that doesn't mean you're free from threats. Not only can the flora kill you with poison explosions and impaling spines, but it's easy to get lost, especially if you wander into caves. And a missing astronaut usually runs out of air and dies. Medieval Dynasty is a fantastic blend of multiple genres, bringing aspects of survival, simulation, and strategy under one roof, making for unique and interesting gameplay. While not perfect, Medieval Dynasty delivers an unforgettable experience, placing you directly in the Middle Ages, forcing you to hunt, farm, and maintain a village for survival. If you're looking for something that shakes up the survival formula, this may be what you're looking for. It has enough of the survival identity present but stretches its legs far beyond what you would expect. Living your day-to-day life out will be tense, rewarding, and exhilarating, but it can also be frustrating if you don't know what you're getting yourself into.